You think you know Stranger Things. The story of 11, the Upside Down, yeah, we all love it. But what if I told you the real story, the one behind the camera, is packed with just as many secrets, crazy twists, and what ifs? We're going to pull back the curtain on this global phenomenon. So, how did we find all this stuff? Well, we basically went full-on detective mode, analyzing hundreds of interviews, articles, you name it, even using some cool AI tricks. And what we've put together is the ultimate collection of secrets and behind-the-scenes stories about Stranger Things. Stuff you've probably never heard before. So get ready. All right, let's kick things off by jumping in our time machine and heading back to the very beginning, Season 1. Because before Hawkins was even a thought, the show was, well, it was something completely different. And honestly, kind of darker, because it was tied to a very real and very creepy conspiracy theory. Yeah, you heard that right. Stranger Things wasn't always Stranger Things. The original title was actually Montauk, and it wasn't set in Indiana, but in Long Island, New York. The whole idea was based on this wild conspiracy theory called the Montauk Project, which claimed the government was doing these secret, sketchy experiments on kids. Eventually, the Duffer Brothers decided to create their own fictional town, Hawkins, so they could really nail that perfect tribute to all the 80s movies they loved. So, how do you find a cast as perfect as this one? Well, it takes a ton of work. Get this, a whopping 1,213 kids auditioned for the main roles. That's over 900 boys and 300 girls. And for their audition, to see if they had that magic chemistry, they all read scenes from an absolute 80s classic, Stand By Me. I mean, what a perfect way to find your crew, right? Okay, brace yourself for this one. Can you even picture a world where 11 dies in Season 1 and never comes back? No way, right? Well, that was the original plan. The Duffer Brothers first saw the show as a limited one-season thing. 11 was supposed to sacrifice herself for good. Oh, and Steve Harrington? He was just supposed to be the jerk boyfriend who gets killed off. It was the actors' performances that were so incredible, they just had to change the entire plan and keep the story going. Phew. You know the Demogorgon, right? That terrifying monster? A lot of people assume it's all just computer graphics. But nope. For a ton of its creepiest scenes, it was actually an actor inside a really complicated animatronic suit. The crew realized that the clunky mechanical way its petal mouth opened and closed was way more unsettling and unpredictable than anything CGI could do. It's a total love letter to those awesome practical monster effects from the 80s. Okay, on to Season 2. The show is a massive hit at this point, so they're going bigger and stranger. We get new characters, a bigger world, and they start to dive into some history that is, well, it's chillingly real. So you know Max, the super cool skater girl. When Sadie Sink auditioned for the part, there was just one tiny little problem. She had no idea how to skateboard, like at all. So she kind of fibbed, just a little. But they loved her so much that they literally sent a skateboard to her house the next day and were like, okay, time to learn. And after a bunch of practice and probably a few scrapes, she totally nailed it and became the Zoomer we all know and love. And speaking of new faces, how about an 80s icon? Sean Astin, a literal Goonie. But he almost wasn't in the show. He first tried out for the role of Murray, the conspiracy guy. When he got the part of Bob Newby, he had a hunch Bob wasn't going to make it to the end. So he actually went to the writers and begged them, please just let me do something heroic before I die. And boy, did they deliver. They gave Bob one of the most heroic and, yeah, devastating send-offs in the whole series. This is where the line between fiction and reality gets seriously blurry and super creepy. The whole Hawkins lab thing with the experiments on 11, that wasn't just made up out of thin air. It was heavily, heavily inspired by a real CIA program called MK Ultra. It was this top-secret, deeply unethical mind control project from the 50s and 60s. When you know that part is real, 11's backstory suddenly feels a whole lot more terrifying. All right, let's jump forward to Season 3. The vibe totally changes here. It's the summer of '85, it's bright, it's colorful, and everything revolves around this one incredible place, the Starcourt Mall. A place that, as we find out, is hiding a lot of secrets. So why did the Starcourt Mall feel so real? Because it pretty much was. The crew found this mall in Georgia that was partly shut down. They took over one empty wing and gave it a full-on 1985 makeover. But here's the craziest part. While they were filming these insane monster battles, the other side of the mall was still open. People were just shopping. Imagine that. And the details in this season are just next level. Remember when Lucas goes on that whole rant defending New Coke? That was a real thing, one of the biggest marketing fails of the entire decade. The show's shoutout was so perfect that Coca-Cola actually re-released New Coke just to promote Season 3. How cool is that? And of course, we can't talk about Season 3 without talking about that scene, the never-ending story duet. You might think they were just lip-syncing, but no. Both Gaten Matarazzo and Gabriella Pizzolo are amazing singers with Broadway backgrounds. They sang that whole thing live for real, creating what has to be one of the most unexpected and iconic moments in the entire show. The horror in Season 3 also got a major upgrade. That disgusting, gooey, body-melting monster in the hospital, that was a direct love letter to a horror classic, John Carpenter's The Thing. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. They used this gnarly mix of practical effects and CGI to make something straight out of a nightmare. And that brings us to the most recent season, Season 4. I mean, this is where things just went to another level. It was bigger, it was way darker, and its impact on pop culture was just massive. And it all came down to some killer music choices and one of the best TV villains ever created. So in Season 4, we learned that the perfect song can literally save you from a mind-flaying monster. Max's escape from Vecna, with Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill playing, that wasn't just a scene, it was a cultural event. It took this song from 1985 and shot it to #1 all over the world. 37 years later. A whole new generation discovered Kate Bush because of this show. And then there was Eddie Munson's epic Upside Down concert. You want to hear something cool? Joseph Quinn, the actor, actually learned how to play Master of Puppets for the scene. But for those insane shredding guitar solos, they brought in actual rock royalty. Ty Trujillo, who is the son of Metallica's bassist Robert Trujillo, recorded those parts. Even Metallica themselves thought the scene was awesome and shared it everywhere. But let's be real. The star of Season 4 was Vecna. And the most incredible thing about him? He's not CGI. That terrifying look is almost all practical makeup. The actor, Jamie Campbell Bower, had to sit in a makeup chair for over 7 hours every single day to become Vecna. It looked so real and so terrifying that when Millie Bobby Brown saw him in costume for the first time, she just started crying. She was genuinely scared of him. And speaking of Vecna, what about his creepy home base, the Creel House? Guess what? It's not a set. It's a real place. It's a historic Victorian mansion in Rome, Georgia, that was built back in the 1880s. They filmed in the actual house, which is probably why those scenes have such an authentic, creepy vibe you just can't fake on a studio lot. So from a secret government conspiracy that almost was, to a real-life haunted house, the story of how Stranger Things was made is just incredible. It's all about creativity, a few lucky breaks, and a serious passion for the classics. Knowing all these little secrets makes Hawkins feel that much more real, doesn't it? So after all this, the only question left is, what on earth are they going to do to top all this for the final season?